Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's presenter, Wayne Austin, is a sales engineer for Sage Fixed Assets, covering the Eastern U.S., Canada, Asia, Central and South America, and Australia. Wayne has a tremendous amount of experience in the technology and telecommunications and financial industries. In today's session, he is going to give you an up-close look at our software and how Sage Fixed Assets can help you gain greater control over your business. If you have questions during the session, please feel free to either enter it in the chat box or Q&A, and we will get those answered as we go, and we'll also provide some time for Q&A at the end. With that, Wayne, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully some of you were able to catch the two previous webinars yesterday and the day before. All of that built towards this webinar, which you actually get to see the software in action. So I'm actually going to try in the short time we have available to go through the depreciation module tracking, as well as the planning module, which is for our CIP portion if you do have that in your business. Okay. All right, so as I stated, I'm going to really do my best to get as much in as I can in the short time, and we're going to talk about fixed asset management in general just very briefly, what our solution, how our solution addresses those issues, and jump right into the demonstration and give you the opportunity to ask questions as I'm going along, because what I'd like to be able to do is if you have interest in certain areas, I can dig a little deeper in those particular areas in the time we have. Now, fixed asset management process is very important for many reasons to your business. For one, you need to make sure you have data integrity. That's going to help you with fraud prevention and a huge impact on being prepared for successfully completing audits. One of the things you may come across as well when doing your fixed asset management through spreadsheets is you're going to get out there and probably find some asset in a location that you do not have in your spreadsheet, or vice versa. You may not find things that you do have in your database, and they're nowhere to be found when you are doing a physical inventory. Additionally, for disaster recovery, it's kind of an added benefit. As we all know, things do happen in life, and if you do have a disaster at the site, the way our system actually stores all information, including images, invoices, things like that can be attached to an asset, is going to have the process of you recovering after a disaster much easier in being able to provide everything, to an insurance company, for example. Okay, so why is our solution, great for your business? We've got a strong brand recognition. Sage is actually in many countries around the world. We have offices in about 24 countries, and it's a complete fixed asset management solution. So we can actually manage your assets through their complete life cycle, including from CIP, which is construction in progress. And also, we have tremendous flexibility with working across many verticals, different industries. And the way the system is flexible, you really are not going to be in a position where you have to adjust your business processes to work with our solution. It's quite the opposite, where our solution is going to enable you to enforce your business processes, as well as develop and improve those processes, making them more efficient. Okay? So just a quick overview of our solution. We do have, like I said, really 4 modules. You can allow you to track and manage your assets, through the entire life cycle, reducing all of the various risks surrounding especially tax and finance compliance, because our system actually is updated twice a year. So you're always going to be up to date with the latest tax code. And there's also, which I'll show you a few things in the solution that's going to help you eliminate redundant data entry, eliminates errors. Okay? So I talked just briefly a little bit just now about the updates. This, for example, is the update that's going to be in our next upcoming release, which will be out in January. And once a year, the update is going to include whatever the latest tax update is, and that is the one that typically comes out in January, because we want to be able to let you take advantage of all of the latest tax rules that are in play by the IRS. Now, we do update all of the federal tax data as well as Canadian tax rules. Additionally, the other update that'll come in, and sometimes the one that comes out in January as well, would include interface updates or other feature updates, things like that. As you know, software world changes often, operating systems, service packs, things like that. So we are always making sure that we are up to the latest compatibility. Okay, and I'm going to be sure to leave questions towards the end so that if you guys do have additional questions that we don't get in during the demonstration, I'll be able to answer them towards the end. But if you do have questions during the demonstration, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and I will try and you know, dig deeper if it's an area that I'm in at the time that I can show you how that particular situation would work for you. All right. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get into the application. All right. So this is the most current release that I'm running right now, and this is just your main start screen. I currently do not have a company open. If you take a look at the lower left portion, you can always get to these areas from any screen. Now, I can only access the Assistant Center and the System Administration because I do not have a company open. But once I open a company, then I'd be able to get into reports and the asset list itself. Reason I want to take a moment and show you this Assistant Center is that, you know, as you're learning how to use this solution, help is never far away. You can quickly go to a user's guide, for example, which is very detailed. It's going to show you a lot of detailed information on how to do things step by step. So it's really very intuitive. One of the best user's guides I've actually come across. So, and if you look across the top left portion, you can easily link to our customer support or our knowledge base. I'm not going to spend much time on this because I actually want to jump right into the product itself, but also want to show you if you're using it in a multi-user environment and you do want to restrict access on the system administration screen, you can actually create profiles, which is going to give you the ability to create a system profile for a group, let's say, and you can assign users to that where you can restrict access based on that. Additionally, on the screen, what's important is you can back up and restore your data. You can edit or add new companies or anything surrounding the system setup, as well as doing import or exports of assets. You can import assets from an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to actually show you an example of that as I go deeper in. Let me go ahead and open a company. The version I'm using here is a network version. So you can, basically it's a client server type setup. You can have multiple databases, multiple companies within each database. And as you can see, I have two databases here. I do have a set of companies in my main production database, as well as in a test database. A reason I recommend that, you know, being an ex-IT person myself, is redundancy is always good. You can play around, test different depreciation methods or test different things in your test environment, and once you've decided, okay, this is the way I want to go, you can certainly copy that over into your production environment. I'm going to go ahead and open up this test company that I have. This is an asset snapshot that just gives you a quick overview of the status of your assets. You can choose not to display this when you open a company, but I find that most people actually like having it. As you can see, my net value for my active assets right now is $3.5 million, but it gives you a breakdown based on the status of the assets. For example, active versus disposed versus inactive or transferred assets. It does come with 7 books, and in this view, you can actually choose which books you want to see the data from. As we know, they may be slightly different. as you may reflect one acquisition value for tax purposes, but have a different acquisition value for your internal or financial book. If you take a look on the main section, the main tabs here, you see there's 4 tabs across the top. This one here is just showing you comparison by book. And if you look at the second tab, this is giving you just a 5-year overview of what your acquisitions were. So as you can see in my first year of my particular company here, didn't acquire too much. Second year is where it peaked, and so on. So it just gives you a quick snapshot of what your spending had been. And this next tab is actually showing you a quick overview and maybe, influential in helping you decide when is a good time to start replacing assets that are fully depreciated. So as you can see here in mine, 49% of my assets are fully depreciated, and the other colors are, of course, based on remaining life. Okay. Now, this is one that many people like, being able to have a snapshot of, because it gives you a quick view of your placed in service by quarter. So as you know, if you've done more than 40% of your assets in Q4, then mid-quarter convention is going to apply, and the system actually does allow you to do that switch on the fly. We'll make it retroactive for that entire fiscal. So pretty easy to take care of that issue. There's also a detailed report that will show you a combined Q1 through 3 total versus Q4, and I'll show you that as well once we're in the system. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into the main asset list view. If you notice here across the top, I've got all of my headers. It looks very, very Excel-like. Now, you can choose what columns are displayed based on what your business needs are and what you want to use, and that's easily customizable by this list here. Now, the system number you must keep, because that's actually a unique system-generated number, but there are other items here that you may not choose, for example, state or property type category, or things that you don't need or don't want to see on this view, you can actually remove from the view. Okay? It is also pretty easy to change the sort order. For example, if you want to sort by location, you double-click just like you would an Excel spreadsheet and double-click on another column to switch it back. You can also, pretty easily drag and drop these around if you want to change the location of these fields, for example, just like you would in Excel. So it gives you the look and feel of things you're familiar with and gives you a lot of flexibility in how you actually use the system. Now, if you take a look at this group column, this is really a filter. And what I've done is created various groups. Let's say I just want to see my assets at location store 1. You can certainly do that. As you can see, I now only have 60 assets showing, whereas if I look at all my active assets, we're looking at 377 assets. Now, if you take a look in these 2 columns, for example, this column here, that little symbol means that there's a note attached to that asset, and the little paperclip in the next column over really means that there is a picture attached to that asset. And as I mentioned, you can actually attach various types of images, be it pictures, and I'll actually go ahead into one of these assets so you can see what I'm talking about. So you can attach pictures, you can attach invoices, for example, or warranty paperwork, anything like that that's going to be helpful to you. So, for example, you're doing a physical inventory, and the person that's doing the physical inventory has no idea what that particular asset looks like. It's going to be helpful in identifying that. Additionally, I believe auditing is going to be another important piece of this, because I'm sure most of you store your have a digital document storage of some type where you're storing the physical copies of various things associated with an asset, but being able to attach all of that material in the solution is going to be very helpful at audit time, so that you can very quickly jump in, see exactly what the asset was, If there were invoices or anything like that attached to it, you could certainly have that there as well and easily track it. Okay. Now, let me talk a little bit about groups. This is really a filter, and I just want to show you really quickly how easy it is to configure that. We deal with a lot of different types of companies, everything from the financial vertical, manufacturing, even rail companies, for example. And they want to be able to filter information in different ways. And I've got a couple already created here that I'll rebuild one of these just to show you how easy it is to create that. So my store one, for example, I'm going to edit it just to show you how that is created. If you click on the line item here, you'll see that I have this filtered based on location. The operator I'm choosing is, and based on this drop-down list, I'm selecting that particular location. So if I wanted to create another group just looking at, for example, a certain type of equipment at one of these locations, I'll just create a name for whatever that list is, something that'll, give me an idea of what that list is going to entail. I'm going to hit add. So now I'm going to actually put a couple of different operators in there to fine-tune my filters. I'm going to go my location is, and I'm going to select store number one, going to add that, but I'm going to additionally now add class because I want to go with a certain class of equipment. I want to select all of my computer equipment. So I'm going to change the operator to is, but if you notice what some of the other operators are, you can actually select greater than, between, based on what you're trying to see. You could even be doing something based on a date range that you would say date is between this date or that date, or date is newer than X date. So in this case, I'm going to add computer equipment to this sort. So now it will look at both of these criteria where location is store number one and class is computer equipment. So I'll create that, close, and so it's immediately available. And all of these groups, by the way, that you're creating are also available in the tracking module, which is going to use the same database looking at this same company. So change that now. So all of my store one computer equipment, and these are all of the items that are at store one that are computer equipment. So it's very helpful in being able to set up different sorts based on what your business process is. You may have different cost centers or different states or regions that you want to be able to break down by, and you can create as many of these as makes sense for your business need. Okay? Now, I wanted to show you a little bit in the asset details, for example. Let me pick one of my newer assets here. All right. Oh, that's, okay. So if you look at the top portion, and this is adjustable so you can adjust your view. If you are doing tracking, this is where you would actually put your asset tag or barcode tag, and I'll show you how that works with relationship to the tracking side as well, because you'll want to make sure that this has a unique identifier, and this is, note, separate from the system number, which is generated by the software. Now, the general fields are not required fields, but obviously you want to customize this and put as much useful information as is useful for your business so that, it all makes sense to you. And what I want to point out in this area is this is one of the opportunities to minimize any type of error with your assets or fraud prevention as well. And I'm going to show you how you can easily do that. So if you look at some of these fields I have here currently, of course, the asset ID, my description. If you notice, as soon as I click on location, location is one of the fields that I have created this drop-down, which is called a smart list. And why that's important is you want to minimize typing as much as possible so that when you are adding assets, if you are doing them, manually a few per month, you can automate as much of this as you possibly can. And you also want to eliminate errors. For example, you're typing in account numbers on each of these assets you're adding. It's pretty easy to have a typo, typing one number incorrect. But I've actually locked this down so that I have to only select one of the existing account numbers, and I can't create a new one. And I'll show you how easy it is to do that. If you go into customize a field, and I'm just going to take a look at the GL expense account, for example. I've activated the Smart List, and if you go into the Smart List Manager, this is where you would build a list of all of these account numbers and a description. So I've got mine associated with a location, for example. I've set it to auto drop down by selecting this, and I've also restricted entry to the list so that you can add a new entry. You have to actually select one from the drop-down window, and that is going to eliminate a lot of errors. As we know, one character in an account number can create a mess. Now, you do have several fields that you can customize of these general fields I was showing you earlier, and I'm using one of these custom date fields, for example, to track warranty date, or you can use it for any other dates you want to track. The others are all custom fields that you can customize to what makes sense for your business. And if you're not using them, for example, you can actually hide some of these fields. So let me find one that's hidden. Here's one that I'm not using at all, so you can hide it. So you can choose not to have, for example, these many fields showing, but you may need all of them, and you can customize them, like I stated, to what meets your business need. Now, you can also make one of these fields, any of these fields are required field. If you notice, none of them are bolded right now, and that would be done also in the same area here, where let's say if I selected one of these fields, you could actually modify that to be a required field. So, all right, let me go ahead and look below here to where books are. If you notice, there are actually 7 books, as I stated before. Of course, you've got your tax, your internal or financial book, your state, AMT, ACE books. These 2 books on the end, you can actually customize them for any way you want. Sorry about that. Let's see. So you can actually customize these fields for any way you choose, or you can just use them as for a way of trying an alternate depreciation method. But let me just walk you through the process of what you would be doing with adding an asset, for example. So I'm actually going to get out of that, and I'm just going to add something. I'll just create an asset. Since these are not required fields, I'm not going to actually choose all of the options up above. I really just want to get to the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's say I added an asset today. Okay, and you're going to select an appropriate property type. Of course, most of you will be using personal or general property. And I'm just tabbing down, and as you notice, it'll auto-populate the placed in service date the same as the acquisition date, but obviously you could have acquired something that's not being placed in service for some time later. So now I'll go ahead and put value of $2,500, and I'm going to just tab down. Now, based on the property type you selected, it is going to default to the most advantageous IRS depreciation method for you, but you can choose to use a different type. For example, if you're not using the accelerated depreciation method, you want to use straight line, or if it's an item you just want to track but not depreciate, you can also choose do not depreciate. Okay, so now with regards to estimated life, based on the type of property, it's going to give you a default of what's applicable for that type, but you can actually choose to change that. And if you're not sure, if you look below here, there's actually an IRS table link that you can quickly go through and take a look at, what is IRS expecting for this particular type of property, like, for example, computers or Peripheral equipment is 5 years for both the ADS and GDS life. It'll have information for buildings as well, things like that. As you know, those are going to be significantly longer. Okay? But it takes a lot of the guesswork out of you. It tries to make sure you're staying on top and really keeps you out of trouble, especially with the tax side. So I'm going to just go ahead and use 5 years here. And I'll make that 5 as well, and I'm simply tabbing down. If you do have assets that are less than 100% business use, you can certainly select that. If it's an asset that qualifies for the 179 deduction, you can do that. But by me choosing the maker's 200, accelerated depreciation is going to pre-populate that 50% allowance for me. So I'm going to just tab down. If you notice, all of the remaining fields are grayed out and nothing has been selected over there. But what the system is going to do is help you not have to type that all in. As I tab down past the beginning date here, it's actually going to populate all the rest of the books. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that out, and should be all there. Okay, good. So now, if you notice, the internal book is going to default to straight line full month, but I know some of you may be using mid-month or some other method. You can certainly choose that, as well as your state rules are typically going to mirror whatever the IRS tax depreciation method is, but depending on the state you're in, you may need to change that. An important note, I've actually got a couple customized. You can create custom depreciation methods. So I know many states, there are several states that use the same, and then there are states that have their individuals. So you could easily do that yourself. And I'll show you quickly how you would do that. So let me go to Customize Depreciation Method right from the top menu. I'm going to not save that asset. Actually, let me get out of there, say no to saving it. And I'm going to go to Custom Depreciation Method. And I'm going to just show you one that I've created just in the interest of time. And basically, this is how you would choose out each year throughout the life that you want to do that depreciation. And you can name it something that's appropriate that applies to your business. And it would immediately show up in the list as a potential depreciation method. Another thing I wanted to show you as well that is going to save you some time is if you frequently get assets, monthly or quarterly that are of the same type, you can create templates by first populating in, of course, as much information as it would be common with that type of equipment. And once you get one in, you'd simply go to the template, let's say computers, for example, which people get often. Say yes to apply the template, and it's going to pre-populate all of that information. So in this case, if I got new computers in, I would just use that template. I would simply go in and assign it an asset ID, of course, select the location and the appropriate GL information, as well as my acquisition and placed in service date and my acquisition value, and I'm done. So huge time saver. So let me not save this one. I want to go back to my asset list again because I wanted to show you something else as well that's going to be, I think, beneficial to you. When you're adding a new asset, you want to get an idea, for example, of what this is going to look like out in the future. You can actually run a quick projection, be it for the tax book or internal book. And it's going to show you what that looks like out for whatever period you selected. So very, very helpful also. And I will show more of those types of things once I go into reporting. Okay. Let's see. I know in the interest of time I need to move a little quicker here. So let me jump to reporting actually right now, and I'll show you a bit more about that because I do want to have time to jump into the other modules. It comes standard with a long list of reports, including fileable forms. For a fileable form, the 4562, for example, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to run it for all active assets, and we're going to do it for my end of period, which was end of 2014. Gives you an idea of what that looks like. And it also will print the worksheet as well. So let me make that a little bigger so that you guys can see that. All right. and it'll be both pages. So this is an actual fileable form that you can simply print and send it out to the IRS. Additionally, the associated worksheet that goes along with that, make it a little bigger so you folks can see it there. And can also export any of these reports, by the way, to Crystal Reports or PDF, CSV file, or straight out to Excel. Okay. Another report that's pretty common that most people always want to see, of course, is depreciation expense. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that real quick. And another intuitive piece with this is that if you're not sure what report you need to run, what it looks like in our system, it's going to give you a description as well as give you a preview of the report. So if I quickly run this one here, I'll run it to my current through date. I'll do active assets, and I'm not going to change the sort. You can change the sort and do quite a bit of customization of the reports as well based on your needs. But I know that this is one that is quite common that many people would run, as well as the depreciation expense report, as well as general ledger posting. So as you can see, looking at this, you can see when my my period is right here for the end of 2015. You can see basis, the 179 allowance. Now, these are my older assets, so no depreciation this run. But if I go towards the end of this year, you'll start seeing some as well, okay? Additionally, you can tell that this is actually a 30-day run, because if you look at my prior through date versus my current, so you know that this is a 1-month period, okay? All right, other one actually I'll show you is a general ledger report, because that's actually, I've got actually on my favorites tab here. This is one many people I'm sure will ask about, because you want to know how can you get the GL information, the posting report from your depreciated assets into your general ledger system. We have links to, of course, all of our software, but we do have a universal link, or we can create custom links to just about any system that our professional services group can actually do for you. But additionally, I'm going to run this report to show you another option as well. I'm just going to run it from my internal book. I'm going to run it for the current through date. And running this report, you can actually now just export this, make this a little bigger for you here. As you can see, all my expenses and credits and totals on the end. I could actually now export this to a CSV format, and most general ledger systems will actually import in CSV format. So it's going to avoid you having to manually enter all this information and be able to just run it. And of course, I just double-clicked on one of the lines here. If you want to see all of the details of what is making that number up, for example, for that account, and you can also see the details as well. So make sure that all of your numbers make sense. But you can easily export this to CSV and import it into a general ledger system. So I think that's another option that many people will like. So in the interest of time, I know I have not been able to cover everything here. I need to actually jump over to the tracking software just to give you a quick view in that side of it as well. Just to show you a quick view before I do get out of this side, what the import process looks like. And I'm just going to walk through it quickly as if I've got my export file already that I'm going to be importing into one of my companies. And I'm just going to, let's say, run it to that. And I am actually going to make it a new list. And if you do not have a field map created, there's a process you would walk through. But I want to show you one using existing field map, because how you structure your spreadsheet before doing the import is going to be very important. And in your cases, you would be coming in with beginning dates, so you'll want to make sure you have all the appropriate information. So if you look at the bottom part of the screen here, you'll see that that top row is all of my headers, and my data actually starts in row 2. So you would want to make sure that you tell it to begin the import where the data actually starts. The other piece I wanted to point out is that if you look at all of the fields located in our side of it, you're going to be mapping each column to that particular field. And so this is what's pre-done already that I didn't want to, it would take a bit of time to do it, but you would actually save that field mapping so the next time you're doing an import, you don't have to go through that process again. I'm just going to hit next, and it shows a preview of the field map of what you have scheduled to be brought in, all of the data, even including this, let's say if your previous system was tracking bonus, and go ahead and validate the information. And I've got 205 records. So if you notice, I've got no invalid records. All are valid records, but I do have some exceptions, okay? So it does have some exceptions, which are no big deal. So I'll go ahead and take a look at that. You can view that report. And what you'd want to do in a case like this, for example, is go ahead and save this report as a PDF so you can refer to it once you go into the asset list and see. But as you can see, these are all tax related. It's really just questioning, okay, are you sure you've got the right depreciation method or the right life across these tax books? And you can take a look at that particular asset and say, hey, yeah, I do want to use it 20-year life, or maybe it should be something different. So the system is just trying to keep you out of trouble, okay? All right, so I am out of that, and I'm actually going to jump over to tracking really fast. And if anyone has questions, fire away. The tracking side of this, I'm going to actually open up the same company that I had there. If you notice, it's popping up and saying that I've got overdue assets. So it's going to show you which assets are overdue. So these are assets that I've checked out. They were expected back, and they have not been returned yet. So what I wanted to point out with this is that you can actually check out or check in assets. Let's see if there's any more there. All right, go to all assets. Check in or check out assets if you've got laptops, tablets, things like that. And it's actually a pretty easy asset. Let me find something electronic that I can check out. I think a freezer may be a little big. Okay, here's a copy machine maybe. That might be a little big, but still you can check it out. If you notice, the detail view and the tracking portion does not have book information. You can display your GL account information if you want to, but none of the book information is viewed here. But if I did want to check out this asset, for example, I would simply go in and say checked out by who. I'm going to actually backdate it so it'll show up as past due. I'll check it out from that date. I'll make it due back yesterday. And that asset is checked out. And as you can see, when I actually run the list now, so remember I just added a copy machine to my checked out assets. I'm going to go back to the asset list. I can go to look at checked out assets, one of the groups here, and now you will see it's actually there. And there's also a report that you can run to show what assets are overdue or past due, for example. So let's see, I can run a check and check out report on all assets, and it's going to show me what assets have been checked out by who and what's their status. So important if you want to be able to track your information, especially in this day of mobile electronics, expensive small items. It's a good thing to be able to do in the tracking software. Okay, let me see now. I do want to show you really quick a little bit about the inventory process. But this is where, let's say, you want to do an inventory, and I've got one partially built for store 3, right? I'm going to use a virtual reader, but you, in your case, have a real barcode scanner attached to the system via the USB port that you would have configured. And I can prepare the reader, send my information out to it, okay? And I'm going to use store 3, so it's going to send that data out to the reader. And now if I wanted to actually do my inventory, I would go through this process of scanning the barcodes, and I'm actually going to cancel it right now. And actually do my inventory. And just to walk through it, just in the interest of time, because I do want to leave time for Q&A, you would go through, having send the information to the scanner, go through, do the inventory, and then you would come back and receive the data from the scanner. So let's say you did not find all of the assets on your list. There's a reconciliation process where you can make a determination of is this missing, or is it possibly another location, or if you did find some things that were in a different location or different condition than your system was showing, you can update that information and reconcile it all back into the system. Additionally, as well, if you come across assets out there that you do not have in your database, you can actually start the process of adding that asset with the scanner. Obviously, no one is going to want to sit there and doing a lot of typing on a scanner, so you put in the basic information, pull it into the system here, and then you can send it over to the depreciation module where you could add book information, etc. Okay? All right, I'm going to have to jump out of here just to briefly show you the planning side so that we can see a little bit about how we handle construction in progress. That's come up quite a bit recently, and I know that some of you may be interested in that as well. I'm actually going to open up a sample project here. It's going to, of course, give you a snapshot of what your actual spending versus your budget, all of that type information. But the important thing I wanted to show in here is that any line item that you have within the project can be sent over to a fixed asset as an asset. Now, you may bundle some of this information together, for example, like in the case of this one, HVAC, where within the line item itself, you can have transactions within that. So, for example, you bought the HVAC at X cost. Now you've got to pay installation charges. You've got to do wiring. You've got to do other pieces. They would all show up as a transaction under that line item. But when you do send the HVAC unit over to the depreciation to become an asset, you would want HVAC to be what's shown, but your cost, of course, is going to roll up to all of your costs associated with it, because that is your true acquisition cost. And you may reflect that, of course, differently for taxes versus your internal book. And, of course, there's many reports you can run as well. Look at the project status. You can have multiple projects within the system as well. And of course, if you look, let me go back here. If you look at the difference in status between these line items, the ones that are labeled S have already been sent to depreciation. The ones that are C are spending is complete, but I've not sent them over yet. And let's say I'll go to one of these here. Spending is not complete, so it's still active, and so you cannot send an asset, a line item, over to depreciation to become an asset until you've actually changed the status of spending to complete. So I know I've got about 15 minutes left, so this is probably a good time for me to jump out and let's do a little Q&A so that if there is anything that I need to jump back in and show you to answer your question, I can actually do that. So, Julie, can you go ahead and jump back in, see if we have any questions?
Sure. Before we get started with any questions, I just want to mention that when people are ready to leave from the webinar, you'll see a short survey pop up. It's just a few questions. If you could just take a moment and quickly answer those just so that we know how well we did today and well, what kind of webinars we should bring you in the future, we would greatly appreciate it. We have one here. They are asking, can you run reports on different companies at the same time?
Yes, you can. If you, I'm using currently the network version, but I'm going to go ahead and open up the Premier version, which is a SQL Server based. You can actually use what's called a global task manager to run various tasks across multiple companies in different databases even. So I can give you a quick example of that. Go right into the global task manager. It's going to have you close the company because it needs the database unlocked, right? And I'm going to define, I'm just going to use what I've got existing here. I'm telling it to actually run depreciation expense across multiple, or even I can actually run depreciation itself across multiple companies. So right now I've got these different companies selected that once I schedule this to, or set this to run, it would actually run depreciation across those multiple companies. Additionally, you can select different events to happen. Like with this particular one, I'm running across 2 companies, but I also have it set to do multiple things. I can have it run the depreciation expense report, file listing report, or I could even have it run depreciation, then run those. So you can do a variety of things. If there are certain reports you need on a regular basis, you can certainly do that across multiple companies. And on the opposite side of that, if you wanted to, I'm going to just open up another company here, run, set a batch to run multiple reports within the same company, you can actually do that in the standard version or this version. So let's say I'm going to jump back into a company. I'm going to go back into reports. This is actually a tab called batch. So I can define a batch of different things to run, but it was only run this variety of events that I select within this company, doing it here. So the difference between the two, again, is in the standard version and the Premier version, you can run batch reports, multiple reports within the same company, or in the Premier version only, SQL Server-based version, you can use the Global Task Manager to do a variety of tasks, not just reports, across multiple companies. Okay? Any other questions?
Yep, we have another one. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can fill them in the chat or the Q&A. This one is asking, can you modify the acquisition value of an asset at a later date?
Yes, you can. But what it's going to do, if you've got an asset that's been in service and partially depreciated, you can go in and modify the acquisition value, but the system is going to ask you if do you want to change that back to the placed in service date, or do you want to only change it as of the most recent current through date that you've depreciated through, so that it will keep the depreciation value based on what the acquisition value when it was placed in service, and then show it going forward after the placed in service date at the new value that you're putting in.
Great. We have another one here. How are the asset invoices uploaded and pictures?
How are the asset invoices? Oh, okay. That's, here, I'll go ahead and do one real quick just to give you an idea. Let's say I'm adding an asset, want to attach image. Now, these are some that I have already created here. So I simply, if it's already in the list, add it. So I'm just going to hit attach. Okay, but let's say I wanted to add something that's not existing here that I've uploaded either the scanned document or a picture to the computer, and then now I'm going to browse to where that file is located. And let's say I've got some JPEGs here, and I'll take one of these here. Select open and attach and close it, and voila. So you could do that for a scanned document, a contract. We have actually a customer I worked with that was doing leases as assets. So he would scan the leases in and attach them. So that's how you would do it, and would support any of the file types that I mentioned earlier, PDF files, JPEGs, basically all the image formats, as well as TIFF files, which would be like an eFax or something like that. Okay?
Great. And looks like just one more here. Can you add new inventory using the scanners?
Oh, yes. I touched on that briefly in the tracking side, that if you are out in the field doing your physical inventory, you come across an item that is not in the database, you can simply put as much information as you can in the scanner. You can have up to 12 fields on the scanner. So obviously, you would put a barcode on there, scan that in, and put a description, location, as much information as you can about it into the scanner. And during the reconciliation process is where you would say, okay, it found something that wasn't in the system. You would add it. And once you pulled it in, you would have more fields that you can add additional information, and it would create it as a new asset.
Great. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions that have come in. Just a quick reminder for everybody to take the short survey as you exit the session. And if you have any more questions that weren't answered in today's session, you can reach us online, but we'll also be reaching out to you to make sure that you had all of your questions answered. Wayne, do you have anything else to share before we go?
No, I just want to say thanks, all of you, for your time this afternoon. And if you are interested in seeing more, I know it was a lot in a short period of time, reach out to our sales department. I'd be happy to schedule, a proper demo showing features that would really apply to your particular business situation.
Great. Well, with that, we will say good day, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.